A massive manhunt for those two convicted killers. Hundreds of officers searching for them after they broke out of a maximum security prison. Police say they could be anywhere by now, and schools near the prison are on high alert. Hi, everyone. I'm Carolyn Costello in New York. ABC's Marcy Gonzalez is in Dannemora, New York. Marcy, these two escapees, very dangerous, aren't they?
Absolutely, Carolyn. These are both convicted killers. One of the guys was convicted of shooting and killing a sheriff's deputy, a member of law enforcement, shooting him 22 times and leaving him for dead in a parking lot. The other guy was convicted of killing a former boss, dismembering him. And before he went to trial, he actually fled to Mexico, where he killed another man. And before all of that, he escaped from a county jail. So investigators are saying these are really bad guys, very dangerous. And of course, this is why it's so urgent to get them off the street and back into custody. So this is now day 3 of the search. Still, tips are coming in, but there is still no sign of them. Governor Cuomo is saying, since we still don't know if these guys got away on foot or if they managed to somehow get into a vehicle, at this point, they could be just about anywhere.
An intense manhunt for a pair of convicted killers who escaped this maximum security prison in upstate New York.
Be on the lookout for 2 escapees from Clinton County Correctional Facility.
Investigators now looking into whether 34-year-old David Sweat and 48-year-old Richard Matt had help from the inside. ABC News learning a woman who works at the prison was removed from her post and is being questioned. Investigators also interviewing hundreds of private contractors working at the facility.
It's almost impossible to think that this was done without help.
The convicts were last seen in their neighboring cells at the Clinton Correctional Facility at 10:30 Friday night. By 5:30 the next morning, they were gone, leaving behind this note reading, "Have a nice day." Police say Sweat and Matt used power tools to drill through a wall, then worked their way down 4 stories, shimmying through 24-inch pipes, making their way to a tunnel, then sawing open this manhole, escaping onto this street about a block from the prison.
They could be literally anywhere.
Federal investigators joining the search for the men described as incredibly dangerous. Matt locked up for 25 years to life for kidnapping and beating a man to death, then dismembering him. And Sweat serving a life sentence for killing a sheriff's deputy, shooting him 22 times.
It brought back all the memories and all the thoughts and the terrible, horrific torture that they have inflicted on Kevin.
And this prison is about 20 miles from the Canadian border, so of course authorities there are searching as well. And there's also now a $100,000 reward for information leading to the capture of these convicts. Carolyn?
Marcy, we understand that schools there are on high alert. What kinds of precautions are the schools taking?
Yeah, schools in the area are still open, but we know in some of the towns they have officers standing by at every single school. They're not letting the kids go out for recess. They're taking a lot of precautions. And even though they don't know if these guys are still in the area, they're acting as though that is a strong possibility. We saw roadblocks all around this area. Our drive here to the prison this morning was just a few miles, and we were stopped 3 times. Officers coming up, asking where we're going, who we are, and looking in the back of our vehicle before letting us continue on. Carolyn?
ABC's Marcy Gonzalez in Dannemora, New York. Thank you so much for that. Now we want to bring in ABC's Brad Garrett. Brad, simply a stunning escape by these 2 convicts. How surprised are you by this elaborate scheme, this elaborate nature of the plan that they executed?
Well, what makes it particularly elaborate, Carolyn, is the people you would have to help you. In other words, the idea that you could keep and maintain some sort of power saw or equipment in your cell without it being discovered is one aspect. You would also have to have inmates cooperating with you to be as lookouts when the guards are walking through early morning hours to tell the 2 inmates to stop cutting or whatever noise they might be making. Then in addition to all of that, which is extraordinary in and of itself, is once you are out, then have a plan to escape away from the prison, because that usually is the failing of most prison escapes, is that the plan is just to take off running. My sense would be, I don't know this of course, that's not the case with these 2 guys, that they had somebody pick them up and move them to another location, I presume a long distance from where the prison is located, about 20 miles south of Canada.
Brad, ABC News has learned that a female prison employee is being questioned. Authorities also suspect that there was inside help here, but it sounds like you suspect a lot more than maybe one or two people helping these guys out.
I think you would have to have more than one or two, only because a prison has obviously a number of correctional officers. Was there, and this is predictably true, particular officers signed to particular units? In other words, these two guys were in the maximum security part of this prison. So the guards there probably are the same from shift to shift most days. So did these two guys co-opt through whatever means one or possibly two guards to sort of ignore that they had obviously power equipment in their cell and were able to have basically a schedule knowing when guards would come back through for routine checks? Now, either the guards doing the checks knew about it and ignored it and allowed it to continue on, or they had enough advanced intel to know when to stop. But that's a very, very intricate, it's one thing to have power tools. It's another, like in the Shawshank Redemption, where he basically chiseled his way out of that prison. That's a whole, that wasn't making the same level of noise, and it didn't require any sophisticated electrical equipment. So, it just doesn't work for me that there wasn't some inside help and outside help.
Speaking of the power tools, let alone the noise they would have been making, how do we believe that the inmates actually got access to these tools from inside the prison or from outside?
Well, the presumption would be that through woodworking courses, they make things in prison. These guys are there for life. So you have to keep them busy doing something. I don't know what the industry is like in that particular prison, but predictably there is something. They make, I'm making this up, license plates or something possibly for the state. To make anything, you're going to have equipment and machinery to do it. So is it logical that it came from that? Sure. Is it also, I suppose, possible that a guard secreted a miniature version of these cutting devices into the prison and gave it to one of these guys? I guess that's also possible. I'm going to go with it was already there and they were able to get it to their cell some way, which in and of itself sounds extraordinary. I mean, how do you carry power equipment into a cell? Do you carry it up in pieces, secrete it on your person, reassemble it once you get into the cell? I don't know. I mean, this story has got multiple layers that we don't know about yet that I think are going to end up being quite interesting when the truth comes out.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the manhunt. How does the FBI and law enforcement conduct manhunts like these? What's the process
Fugitives predictably are caught because they touch the past, which we all would do on the run. You contact girlfriends, boyfriends, relatives, people you served time with before, people you can go to get food, shelter, transportation. Well, what happens is when people escape, that intel is immediately pulled up. Law enforcement then starts covering those people, in other words, individuals that were in your life before, to assess whether you have reached out to them or not. So that's one component, and that typically is the failing of most people on the run. Now, let's say, for example, someone picked them up outside prison, which I think is likely, that they had to communicate with that person some way. Now, could that somebody be another person that worked at the prison? I suppose that could be the case, where there wouldn't be a history of telephone calls, visits in the, visitation days. That also would be extremely interesting if that would end up being true. So the search for these guys is going to do the predictable that I talked about. And the idea also is to get information out generally to law enforcement in all of the geographic areas where they have a history, wherever that might be. In one case, in your lead, you mentioned earlier, or Marcy mentioned earlier, about one of them escaping previously to Mexico. Is that a predictable place they might go? Of course.
Okay, and what about Canada? How likely is it that they have crossed the border into Canada and they're hiding out there?
I think it's very realistic. I mean, the Canadian border, it has a lot of wilderness. And I'm going to guess where that prison is located. That's in a very rural part of upstate New York. So the idea that you could probably literally walk into Canada through woods is real. Now, the question is, what do you have on the other side? That's going to be the real issue. So, did a driver drop them off? They walked through, met up on another road, and the person who dropped them went through regular customs or whatever, border customs, to get into Canada. I mean, all those things are possible. But again, if any of that would be true, Carolyn, you'd have to have a plan on the other side. I mean, where are you going to go? How are you going to get food? How are you going to pay for it? Where are you going to sleep? Fugitives have the same issues you and I do every day of basic living. And we'll have to see. But I'm fairly impressed. They've now been gone upwards of 3 days, and I'm not hearing really any hot leads.
Okay, ABC's Brad Garrett, thanks for joining us. I'm sure we'll talk a lot about this in the days to come. Thank you. And you can keep up with this story in real time by downloading the ABC News app and storing the story for exclusive updates on the go. I'm Carolyn Costello in New York.